The slap came before anyone could stop it. Not from Minjae, not from Director Choi. It came from the woman in the gray blazer, the one with the Swiss certification, and the rigid smile and 9 years of working for families whose names appeared in financial newspapers, and it landed across the cheek of a 6-year-old child who had simply, clearly, and without apology, said, "I don't want you." The sound cracked through the east corridor like a door being kicked off its hinges. Seo Yeon didn't cry. That was the thing that would stay with Annabelle for months afterward. The child did not cry. She went very still, the way animals go still when they've calculated the threat, and decided that stillness is the only safe response, and she pressed one hand to her own cheek and stared at the woman with eyes that were her father's eyes, dark and absolutely merciless in their clarity. The other 4 candidates froze. Mrs. Park, at the end of the corridor, made a sound that was not quite human. Annabelle dropped the laundry basket. She crossed the distance between herself and Seo Yeon in 4 steps, crouched down, put both hands on the child's face, gently, carefully, reading the skin for damage, and said, low and steady, "Look at me. Are you okay?" Seo Yeon looked at her. "I'm okay," the child said, and then, without any detectable tremor, "I still choose Belle." The corridor went completely silent. Annabelle stood up. She turned and faced the woman in the gray blazer, and whatever was on her face in that moment was enough that the woman took 1 step backward without apparently deciding to. "You need to leave this house," Annabelle said. "I am a professional." "You struck a child," Annabelle said, "in her own home. You need to leave right now." The woman opened her mouth, closed it, looked around at the other 4 candidates for support and found none. They had all discovered something extremely interesting to look at on the opposite walls. She looked at Mrs. Park, who had moved to stand behind Annabelle with the expression of a woman who had made peace with consequences. The woman in the gray blazer left. Annabelle turned back to Seo Yeon. She picked her up. The child was light. She wrapped both arms around Annabelle's neck immediately, face tucking into the curve of her shoulder, and carried her away from the corridor without another word to anyone. She didn't know yet that there were cameras in that hallway. She didn't know yet that Minjae had seen every second of it. If you are new here, you need to stay for this entire story because it is going to break you open. Subscribe right now, hit the notification bell, and share this with someone who needs to see what real loyalty looks like. This story goes places you are not prepared for. Let's go. Minjae watched the footage 4 times. Not once, not twice. 4 times. From the beginning, from the moment the laundry basket hit the marble and Annabelle moved. Not hesitated, not calculated, not weighed the professional implications of inserting herself into a situation that had nothing to do with her job title. She simply moved, and every time he watched it, the same thing happened in his chest. The same tightening, the same something he did not have a name for because he had spent 20 years making sure he didn't need names for things like that. He called Director Choi. "The one in the gray blazer," he said. His voice was the quiet kind, the kind Choi knew to be afraid of. "I want her agency license flagged. Every placement she applies for going forward receives a call from this office first." Choi was quiet for exactly the kind of pause that meant he was deciding whether to say the thing he was thinking. "Understood. And the others? Send them home. All 4. Full payment, courtesy supplement. Thank them for their time." A longer pause. The kind that meant the thing Choi was thinking was losing the battle with the thing Choi felt he had to say. "Minjae, you haven't made a formal decision yet. Sending them home without—" "I made a decision," Minjae said, 20 minutes ago, when I watched a woman strike my daughter and the only person in that corridor who moved was the one I was told I wasn't supposed to choose. He let that land in the silence. "Draft the contract. Annabelle Jason, primary caregiver. Triple her current rate. I want it on my desk by morning." "Minjae, draft the contract, Choi." He set the phone down. He sat in his office, his empire above the city, his monitors, his phones, his operation running its quiet machinery through Hyven Ridge's veins like blood. And he did something he almost never did. He sat still, He sat still, and he watched the footage one more time, and he stopped it at the moment. Seo Yan said, "I still choose Belle." He looked at his daughter's face on the screen. The redness on her cheek, the absolute absence of fear in her eyes, the way she said it, not to the woman who had struck her, not in defiance of anything. She said it to Annabelle, like a confirmation, like a fact she needed to make sure survived the incident intact. "I still choose Belle." He closed the footage. He went downstairs. He found them in Seo Yan's room. Annabelle had ice wrapped in a cloth, pressed with the precise gentleness of someone who understood the difference between clinical and tender, against his daughter's cheek. She was talking, not about what happened. She was not going over it, not rehashing it, not performing outrage or sympathy at his daughter in the way adults sometimes did, turning a child's bad moment into their own emotional event. She was talking about lions. Lions, she was saying, in certain parts of the continent, and her voice had that particular quality he had started to recognize, low and warm and completely unbothered, the voice of someone who was not performing calm but actually was calm, bone deep, had been observed doing something remarkable. They had been observed choosing, specifically, deliberately choosing which cubs to walk beside on the hunt. Not the biggest cubs, not the strongest ones, the ones who paid attention, the ones who stayed close, the ones who chose back. Seo Yan was listening the way she listened to things she intended to keep forever. Minjai stood in the doorway and looked at his daughter's face and felt the rage and the grief and the gratitude moving through him in the same current, indistinguishable from each other. Enormous in a way he was entirely unequipped to process standing in a doorway in the middle of the afternoon. He crossed the room. He crouched beside the bed, and he looked at Seo Yan's cheek, closely, carefully, the way he assessed damage in every context because damage that was not assessed could not be addressed, and he had learned this at 7 years old and never unlearned it. And he put one hand very lightly alongside her face. "It doesn't hurt," she said. "I know, I'm checking anyway." He looked up at Annabelle. She was watching him with the controlled expression she wore when she was reading a situation before committing to a response. He had catalogued this expression over days of observation, had noted it, had found it the most honest face she made because it was the one she couldn't manufacture. The cloth with ice was still in her hand. Her knuckles were slightly white around it. She was angrier than she was letting anyone see. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and something passed between them that had no business language. "Thank you," he said. "She's your daughter," Annabelle said. "Of course." "That's not why you moved," he said. She didn't answer that. She held his gaze and didn't answer it, and that somehow was more of an answer than anything she could have said. He stood. He looked at Seo Yan. "I'll be back to say goodnight." "Belle stays," Seo Yan said. Still not a question. Never a question. A statement of how the world was arranged. "Belle stays," he confirmed. He walked out. He stood in the corridor with his back to the door and his hands at his sides, and his entire professional architecture doing absolutely nothing useful. And he thought, my daughter is 6 years old and she understands something about loyalty that most of the men in my organization have spent careers failing to learn. He went to find Choi. There was a contract to draft. The household meeting the next morning was not what anyone expected. Annabelle had positioned herself at the back of the room. Not out of insecurity, not out of deference, but out of the practical intelligence of someone who wanted to read the room before the room read her. She had learned that skill in other houses, other cities, other rooms full of people, deciding what she was worth before she had opened her mouth. She had learned to stand where she could see everyone's face. Minjae walked in and stood at the head of the room and said her name first. Not the announcement. Not the preamble. Her name, first, directly, like she was the point, and everything else was the context. "Miss Jason," he looked at her across the room. Every head turned. "Effective this morning, your role in this household has been formally reclassified. You are no longer listed as general staff. Your title is primary caregiver and nanny to Seo Yeon Kang. Your salary has been adjusted to reflect this position. Your access level has been upgraded across the estate. Your revised scope of responsibilities will be distributed to you by this afternoon." He paused. He looked, briefly, specifically, unmistakably, at Director Choi. "Anyone in this household who fails to extend her the professional respect her position warrants will answer to me personally. That is all." He left. The room held its breath. Mrs. Park turned and looked at Annabelle with an expression that was warm and knowing and ancient and deep, the expression of a woman who had watched this household for 17 years and had been waiting for something to change in it and had just seen it change. Choi looked at Annabelle with an expression that was the precise, controlled, professional opposite of all of those things. It was not hatred. It was not cruelty. It was the specific face of a man who had calculated risks correctly and lost the argument anyway, and who had not yet decided whether that meant the risk was wrong or the argument was. Hana, the youngest of the day staff, started to smile, caught Choi's eye, found something in her apron pocket that urgently required attention. Annabelle stood at the back of the room and let the weight of it settle over her. Not triumphantly, not with relief, with something quieter and more complicated, something that felt like the particular solemnity of a thing that cannot be undone. She found Seo Yeon in her room. The child was sitting on the bed with Mr. Kim, legs dangling, dressed, waiting with the stillness of someone who had been extremely still for a very specific reason. "So?" Seo Yeon said. "So," Annabelle said, "it's official. I'm your nanny." Seo Yeon considered this with the gravity it deserved. "I know," she said. "I heard the whole meeting." Annabelle looked at her. "You were in your room." "The vent in my room connects to the hallway near the meeting room," Seo Yeon said, in the tone of someone providing a well-established geographical fact. "I have known this since I was 4. Annabelle stared at her. "Your father's daughter," she said softly. Seo Yeon smiled, not the careful smile she gave adults she was assessing. The full one, open and unguarded and completely undefended, the smile of a child who has been waiting a long time for exactly this moment and is now allowing herself to feel it in full. She held out her arms. Annabelle sat on the bed and let the child fold herself against her side, small and warm and entirely certain, and thought, "I came to this city to rebuild quietly. I came for the mercy of work that was demanding enough to occupy the space where grief had been. I did not come for this. I did not come for a child who maps acoustic vents at age 4. I did not come for a man who says a woman's name first in a room full of people and makes it mean something that has nothing to do with job titles. I did not come for any of this, and I am not leaving any of it. Here's what nobody tells you about this situation, and I need you to drop a comment right now because this question is going to divide the entire comment section. This man runs the underworld. He controls Heaven Ridge. His word ends careers and starts wars. And a 6-year-old just reorganized his entire household by running down a corridor. Is that power or is that love? Comment below. Subscribe if you haven't. This is about to escalate hard. The days between 10 and 22 built their own rhythm. And rhythm in a house like Minjae's was not a small thing. It was everything. A household that ran on fear needed predictability as its skeleton. Annabelle understood this without being told. She understood that every choice she made in the first month was being observed and measured and stored by everyone in the estate, from Mrs. Park with her quiet, warm attention, to Director Choi with his cold, precise auditing. And she moved through those days with the deliberateness of someone who knew they were being read. She was also, unavoidably, being read by Seo Yeon. Seo Yeon watched her the way the child watched everything, without a parent watching, from behind activities, from the corner of engaged conversations, from the periphery of rooms she was supposedly occupied in. She was building a file. Annabelle could feel it. She had the sensation of being catalogued, not coldly, the way Choi catalogued her, but warmly, the way someone catalogues a thing they already love and are simply collecting evidence for. It came to a head on day 14. Seo Yeon came to her in the evening, not at bedtime, not during the scheduled evening reading, But at 7 o'clock, when Annabelle was reviewing the week's schedule in the small office that had been allocated to her, a room that had previously been a storage space and still smelled very faintly of old cardboard under the fresh paint that Mrs. Park had arranged to have applied in the week before Annabelle's new role began, Seo-yeon knocked. She never just walked in. She knocked, which was remarkable for a 6-year-old, and which Annabelle had already decided was the most Min-jae trait she possessed. This innate understanding of thresholds, and the courtesy of announcing yourself before crossing them. "Come in," Annabelle said. Seo-yeon came in. She closed the door behind her. She sat in the small chair across from the desk, with the posture of someone who had come with a purpose. "I want to know about you," she said. Annabelle set down her pen. "What would you like to know?" "Where did you grow up?" "Atlanta, in Georgia, in America." Seo-yeon considered this. "Is it warm there?" "Very warm. Hot, actually. The kind of hot that makes the air heavy. You feel it before you step outside. Just from opening the door, the warmth comes in first." Seo-yeon was quiet, filing this. "Did you have a family?" "My grandmother raised me," Annabelle said. She was the kind of woman who made every room she was in feel safer. She sang all the time, not performing just as she moved through the house. Like the singing was just part of existing. Seo-yeon looked at her with those dark, perceptive eyes. "Is that where you learned to hum?" Annabelle felt something catch in her chest. "Yes," she said. "I think so. I didn't realize I did it until you told me." "She taught you without teaching you," Seo-yeon said. "Yes, exactly that." Seo-yeon was quiet for a moment. She looked at her hands in her lap. "My mother used to do things like that too," she said. "Things I didn't know she was teaching me until she was gone, and I noticed I was still doing them." She paused. "I count birds. Every morning. She used to count them with me. Now I count them alone, but I still count them." She looked up. "Does that mean she's still teaching me? Even now?" Annabelle looked at this child, 6 years old, sitting in a small chair, asking a question that most adults spend their entire lives not being brave enough to ask. "Yes," she said firmly. "That's exactly what it means. The love doesn't stop being instructive just because the person is gone. It keeps working in you. Everything she put into you is still putting itself into you, every day, every bird you count." She held her gaze. "She's still teaching you. She'll never stop." Seo-yeon absorbed this. Something in her face settled. Not grief resolved, not grief absent, but grief understood, held in a frame that made it survivable. "Okay," she said. She got up. She went to the door. She stopped. "Annabelle," she said. She never called her Belle in formal moments. Belle was warmth. Annabelle was gravity, deployed for the things that required full weight. "Yes," Annabelle said. "I'm glad your grandmother taught you to hum," Seo-yeon said. "Because when I was sick in the dark and I heard it, it sounded like someone saying I'm here. Without words, just, I'm here." She left. Annabelle sat at her desk for a very long time after, with wet eyes she hadn't noticed, thinking about a woman in Atlanta who sang as she moved through a house and had no idea her love was still traveling forward through people she would never meet, arriving in a cold, dark room in Haven Ridge as the sound of someone staying. The week that followed was Annabelle's education in what it meant to be wanted. Not desired, not used, not tolerated as a necessity, or endured as an obligation. Wanted, specifically, deliberately, joyfully wanted, by a 6-year-old who had apparently been storing a comprehensive list of things she intended to do when she finally had her person, properly, officially, on paper, and was now executing that list with the organizational efficiency of a small CEO who had been waiting for budget approval. Tuesday was baking. This was non-negotiable. Seo-yeon had decided on baking Tuesday with the same finality she applied to everything, and she arrived in the kitchen at 9 a.m. with a printed list, handwritten, because she was 6, but structured like a typed document, of what they would bake and in what order and what the acceptable standards for each item were. Annabelle looked at the list. She looked at Seo-yeon. "Did you write this last night?" she asked. "I wrote it 3 weeks ago," Seo-yeon said. "I was waiting." They baked, the kitchen filled with warmth and flour and the particular chaos of a child who had extremely high standards and moderate fine motor skills, and Annabelle let her lead and corrected gently and did not once take the bowl away. And by 11 o'clock there were 12 imperfect and entirely wonderful cookies on the rack, and Seo Yan was looking at them with the satisfaction of an artist surveying completed work. Mrs. Park appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked at the cookies. She looked at Seo Yan. She looked at Annabelle. "She hasn't baked since—" she started and stopped. Something moved across her face. "She used to bake with her mother," she said quietly. "Every Tuesday." Annabelle absorbed that without moving. "She asked me for Tuesday baking," she said carefully. "I didn't suggest it." "I know," Mrs. Park said. "That's the point." She paused. "She's bringing the good things forward. She's not burying them. She's carrying them into the new." She set down the teapot. "That's not something a 6-year-old learns alone. Someone showed her that was possible." Seo Yan was wrapping 2 cookies carefully in a napkin. "For Appa," she said, "for when he finishes his calls." "Should we take them up?" Annabelle asked. Seo Yan considered. "He comes down for the 3rd coffee at 11:30, she said. "We leave them on his desk before that, so he finds them himself. He likes finding things. He doesn't like being handed them." Annabelle stared at her. "How do you know that?" Seo Yan gave her the look. Patient, slightly sorrowful, the look she gave adults who had asked a question with an obvious answer. "I watch him," she said simply. "Don't you?" The question sat in the kitchen long after Seo Yan had moved on to the next item on her Tuesday list. Director Choi found her on the 9th day. She heard him coming. She had already learned the sound of his footsteps. The precise, intentional placement of a man who moved through the world like every step was a decision. She set down the garden shears and turned. He stopped at a professional distance. He looked at the garden rather than at her. "I need you to understand something," he said. "All right. My reservations about this arrangement have never been personal. You've been clear about that. What I have not been clear about," he said, still looking at the garden, "is the specific nature of the risk." He paused, assembling the words with the care of a man who had decided to say more than he planned. Min-jae operates in a world where perception is currency. Not image, perception. The way his decisions read to the people around him, the confidence it generates or erodes, the degree to which they believe his judgment is sound. One questionable decision is noted. 2 is a pattern. A pattern is an opening. He looked at her now. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" "You're saying I'm a liability," she said. "I'm saying you could become one," he corrected. "If this arrangement becomes something it isn't supposed to be." "And what is it supposed to be?" "A nanny arrangement," Choi said. "Clear, professional, bounded." Annabelle looked at the roses she had been tending. The clean order she had brought to this section of the garden over 9 days. The careful work of someone who found satisfaction in making neglected things whole. "Director Choi," she said, "can I ask you something?" He waited. "How long have you worked for him?" 14 years. "And in 14 years, have you ever seen him make a decision that was not entirely deliberate?" Choi was quiet. "He watched the footage," Annabelle said. "Before he called you, he made the decision in 20 minutes. He is not a man who makes decisions in 20 minutes accidentally. He chose this knowing exactly what it looked like and what it cost." She held his gaze. "You're warning me about a risk he already calculated and accepted. That's not about me. That's about whether you trust his judgment." The garden was very still. Something moved in Choi's face. Not warmth, not approval, but the specific recalibration of a man who has been answered better than he expected. "Don't make him regret it," he said. "I won't," she said. He left. She turned back to the roses and thought, Choi is not my enemy. He is doing the same thing I am doing. He is protecting someone he has decided to be loyal to. We are just protecting from different angles. She was still thinking about it when Min-jae appeared at the garden door at dusk. He leaned against the frame with his jacket off, collar open, the particular looseness of a man at the end of a 16-hour agenda. He looked at her across the dimming garden. "Choi spoke to you," he said, "this afternoon." "What did he say?" "That perception is currency in your world, and I'm a liability waiting to happen." She paused. "He also said don't make you regret it." Minjai's jaw moved slightly. "And what did you say?" "I said you don't make decisions accidentally." She looked at him. "Was I wrong?" "No," he said. He walked into the garden. He stopped beside her and looked at the roses rather than at her. The way Choi had, which she was beginning to understand, was a thing people did in this household when a conversation was more than they intended it to be. "Seo Yeon left cookies on my desk this morning. She wrapped them herself." "I know. She used 6 napkins. She was being thorough." He looked at her then. "She told me last week, before all of this, that you were the only person in the house who talked to her like she was a person." "She is a person," Annabelle said. "I know that," he said. "I have always known that. But knowing it and doing it are different." Something in his voice went slightly raw at the edge. "She is so much of her mother, the way she sees things, the way she doesn't miss anything. It used to make it hard to be easy with her. I would look at her and see things I was not ready to see, and I would manage it by managing her. Efficiently, correctly, from the right distance." "And now?" Annabelle asked. "Now she left cookies on my desk in a 6-napkin situation, and I ate both of them standing at the window, and I thought, she made these with her hands this morning. She thought about me, not what I could give her, or do for her. She just thought about me." He paused. "She gets that from you. The thinking about people part. You've given her a language for it. A practice." He turned and looked at her. "I'm watching my daughter become herself because of someone I almost didn't choose." The garden was nearly dark. Seo Yeon asked if you'd have dinner with us tonight, and he said, "She sent me to ask." "Why you?" He was quiet for exactly 1 beat. "She said you look at me differently than you look at other people," he said, "and that people say yes to people they look at differently." Annabelle felt heat move up the back of her neck. "Tell her yes," she said. The incident arrived on day 23. His name was Chairman Bay, Old Money Havenridge, the kind of presence that occupied space without filling it. A quality of negative gravity, everything in the room slightly curving toward whatever he wanted. He was Minjai's senior associate, the kind of alliance maintained through mutual benefit and mutual knowledge of where things were buried, and he arrived for what was described as a courtesy visit and moved through the estate with the proprietary comfort of a man who considered himself a stakeholder in everything he surveyed. He found Annabelle in the corridor outside Seo Yeon's playroom. He stopped. He looked at her with the deliberate, unhurried assessment of someone deciding the value of something they are not sure they want. "You're the nanny," he said, the word carrying a shape, a category, a ceiling. "I am," she said. "American. Yes." His eyes moved over her with a specific quality that certain men have deployed against certain women across centuries. The look that is not exactly a leer, but is its respectable cousin, a measuring that does not acknowledge that the thing being measured is a person. "Minjai has always been sentimental about unexpected things," he said. "His father was the same. Good man. Occasional lapses of judgment." He let that settle like a stone in still water. "It's a family trait." Annabelle held his gaze. She kept her face neutral with the discipline of someone who had learned that showing your reaction is the thing they are actually after. "Will that be all?" she said. Bay smiled the smile of a man who was used to landing blows and watching people not know where to put them. "Enjoy the position," he said, "while it lasts." He moved past her. She stood in the corridor and breathed through the anger 1 breath at a time, the way you do when the anger is legitimate and the situation requires you to be smarter than the feeling. She told Minjai that evening. Clean, factual, direct. No performance, no editorial. Just what happened and what was said, word for word. Minjai listened without moving. When she finished, The silence had the quality of still water before something breaks the surface from below. "Word for word?" he said. "Word for word." He looked at her. "Are you all right?" The question surprised her. Not the concern. She had learned his concern was always present, just expressed in minimal language, but that it was the first thing he asked. Not what he was going to do, not a move toward action. First, "Are you all right?" "I've dealt with worse," she said. "You shouldn't have to deal with it at all," he said. "Not in this house." He called Choi. What was said to Chairman Bay in what room, at what tone, with what precise information laid on the table was never repeated to Annabelle. But Choi appeared the next morning and looked at her with that barely there recalibration that was becoming, she now understood, his version of warmth. "He won't return," Choi said. "Thank you for telling me," she said. He turned to leave. "Director Choi," she said. He stopped. "You were in that room too," she said. "You didn't have to be. You chose to be." She held his gaze. "I know what that means. In this world. Thank you." Choi looked at her with an expression that was the most unguarded thing she had ever seen on his face. It lasted 1.5 seconds. Then he nodded once and left. What happened in the 3 days after Chairman Bay left was a shift so subtle only someone watching closely would have caught it. And in this household, everyone was watching closely. Minjae started coming down to the kitchen at 7. Not 7:30. Not 8. 7. Sometimes 6:55. The third cup was always there. Seo-yeon had started placing it before she came downstairs herself. She would pad out at 6:30, still in her pajamas, place the cup with the methodical care of a priest arranging an altar, and then go back to her room to get dressed. By the time she reappeared, bird journal in hand, the cup was sitting in its place like it had always been there. Annabelle watched this happen 3 mornings before she said anything. "She puts the cup out for him," she told Mrs. Park. "Every morning since the 2nd week," Mrs. Park said. "When she decided you were staying." She poured tea. "She added the 3rd cup when she decided he was going to come around." She set the pot down. "She was right about the timing, too. She said by day 20 he would be coming down at 7. It is currently day 21. Annabelle stared at her. "She is 6, Annabelle said. "She is her father's daughter," Mrs. Park said pleasantly. "Would you like more tea?" The morning of day 22, Minjae sat down in the 3rd cup chair and said, while reading something on his phone, without looking up, "She added the bird guide to your room." "The 3rd one," Annabelle said. "She said I needed the comprehensive edition for serious work." He looked up. The phone went face down on the table. He looked at Annabelle with the expression he had been developing over 22 days. The one that was not the office expression, not the boardroom precision, but the expression of a man who was allowing himself to be in a room with a person without requiring the room to be anything other than what it was. "I used to eat breakfast alone," he said. "I know." "For 11 months. In the office. With the monitor on." He paused. The surveillance feed. It was the closest thing I had to company, to the feeling of a house that was occupied. Annabelle looked at him. "You watched the cameras to feel less alone," she said. "That's a more vulnerable way of saying it than I intended," he said. "It's the accurate way," she said. "There's a difference." Seo-yeon, from behind her cereal bowl, without looking up from the bird journal. "I always knew you were watching, Appa. I used to wave at the cameras." Minjae looked at his daughter. Annabelle looked at her cup. "She waves at the cameras," he said, "to no one in particular." "Every night before bed," Seo-yeon confirmed. "So you could see I was okay, so you didn't have to worry." She turned a page in the journal. "Harold was at the east window this morning. He's establishing territory. I've documented it." The kitchen was warm and ordinary and completely extraordinary. Minjae looked at Annabelle across the table. She looked back. Neither of them said the thing they were both thinking, which was this. This kitchen, this morning, this child waving at cameras in the dark so her father would know she was safe. This is what all of it has been for. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Annabelle should tell Minjae what she's feeling or keep it strictly professional? I need to see both sides go at it below. Like this video and keep watching. We are nowhere near done. Seo Yeon got sick on day 28. Stomach. The violent, undignified, thoroughly unromantic kind that arrives after a child eats something at a birthday party that the birthday party had no business serving. She spent the first evening pale and furious. Furious in the specific way Seo Yeon was furious about things. Quiet and internal, and expressed primarily through the rigid set of her jaw, and the quality of stillness she deployed when she was outraged, but had decided screaming was beneath her. Annabelle stayed. Not heroically. Not dramatically. She stayed the way she always stayed, without announcement, without requiring that her presence be noted or praised, simply present in the room where the need was. Water in careful amounts. Cold cloth. The low hum in the dark that she had not known she did until a child told her it sounded like someone saying, "I'm here." At 1 a.m, Seo Yeon said, "You don't have to stay." "I know," Annabelle said. "You could sleep." "I could," Annabelle agreed. "I'm choosing this." Seo Yeon looked at her from under the duvet with enormous eyes. "Why?" Annabelle thought about the honest answer. "Because when someone I love is hurting," she said, "I can't be comfortable somewhere else. That's just how I'm made." Seo Yeon was quiet for a long time. "Am I someone you love?" she asked. "From almost the beginning," Annabelle said. "You ran to me in a corridor and held on like you already knew." She looked at her. "I think you did already know." "I did," Seo Yeon said. "I could tell by your hands when you put them on my face that day to check if I was okay. Most people touch my face like they're checking a temperature. You touched my face like it mattered." She paused. "My mother used to touch my face like that." The room was completely still. "I'm not your mother," Annabelle said carefully. "I know," Seo Yeon said. "You're Belle. That's different. That's its own thing." She thought about it. "I have a bell-shaped space. I've had it for a while. I was waiting for you to figure out it was yours." Annabelle felt something happen inside her that she had no words for and did not try to name. She smoothed the hair from Seo Yeon's forehead, and the child closed her eyes and settled, and the estate was as quiet as it ever got. And outside, Havenridge ran its night operations. And in here there was just the small warmth of a child trusting a woman completely, which is one of the most serious things in the world. Minjae arrived at 4:30. He came in quietly, stood in the doorway, looked at Seo Yeon sleeping, her face relaxed and younger looking in sleep than it ever was awake. He looked at Annabelle, dark circles, hair escaping the tie, the glass of water she'd been holding for hours. "How long?" he said softly. "Since 11, he came in. He sat on the edge of Seo Yeon's bed and put his hand against her forehead. Cool now, the fever already broken, and something in the set of his shoulders released. He looked at Annabelle. "You need to sleep," he said. "She's not—" "I'm here now," he said. "I'll stay. Please." Annabelle looked at Seo Yeon, at this man beside her doing what she had been doing, keeping watch, being present, choosing this room over everything that competed for him. "She likes it when you hum," Annabelle said. "She won't ask, but she likes it." "I know," he said. "I've done it before, just not when she knew I was." She left. She stood in the corridor outside the closed door and heard, barely audible, the low, uncertain beginning of a hum, not melodic yet, finding its way, a man remembering something he had put down and was picking back up. She walked to her room and was asleep in under a minute. He found her in the library on the 38th night. She had claimed the library in the second week, not officially, but through consistent presence, through the gradual accumulation of her there in the evenings. It was the one room in the estate that felt like it had been lived in, rather than staged, the book spines broken in the real way, the leather chairs carrying the softness of many hours. He knocked on the open door. She looked up. He sat across from her, not beside her, across the careful distance, and they looked at each other in the warm light. "I need to tell you something," he said, "before you hear it differently." "All right." There was a piece, digital, small outlet. He looked at his hands. One of the candidates, the gray blazer, it's been removed. She's been relocated. She won't be practicing in this city again. He looked up. 3 of my associates referenced it this week, in the way things are referenced in my world. Oblique, over meals, the kind of comment that functions as a test. "What did you say to them?" "Nothing," he said. "I said absolutely nothing. I looked at them and let the silence say that it was not available for commentary." He held her gaze. "In my world, that is the most expensive thing you can do. Silence in the face of challenge says, I will absorb the consequence of this rather than adjust the decision. I will carry the cost of this judgment rather than share it." "You didn't have to tell me that," she said. "I told you because you deserve to know what it cost, not so you feel guilty. So you know it was a deliberate choice I would make again." Annabelle set her book down. "Min-jae," she said. His name. Direct. She had never used it before. It arrived between them like a key in a lock, both of them feeling it turn. He went very still. "I came here broken," she said. "I came to rebuild quietly, in work that was demanding enough to keep me occupied while the broken parts healed. I was not looking for anything. I was not positioning myself for anything. I was carrying laundry through a corridor on a Thursday morning." She held his gaze. "And your daughter ran to me and held on, and something happened that I have not been able to undo since. Not just with her." She paused. "I am not going to pretend I don't feel what I feel. I think we're past that. But I need you to know, if it ever creates a risk to Seoyeon's stability, I step back. Without argument, without requiring anything from you. She comes first. Always." The library was absolutely still. "I know that," he said. "You said she comes first before you said anything else. That's the only reason I trust this." He stood. He moved to the window seat and sat beside her. Not across. Beside. The distance closed simply, without ceremony. The people who have wanted access to my life have always made sure I understood what they wanted from me. Power, money, proximity, protection. There is always a want being managed. He looked at her. "You want nothing from me. You want things for Seoyeon. That is an entirely different sentence. It is the most disarming thing I've encountered in 20 years of operating in this world." Outside, Havenridge moved in its eternal complex patterns. Inside, 2 people sat shoulder to shoulder at a window and watched it together and did not need to name what was happening because it had already, without announcement, arrived. "She drew the 3 figures again," he said. "This morning, she put the house behind them this time." "Permanent," Annabelle said. "Yes." He looked at her. "She's been building something since the day in the corridor. She built it out of cookies, and bird guides, and Tuesday baking, and a drawing in the center of the dinner table. She built it piece by piece, and she waited for us to notice we were standing inside it. She's extraordinary," Annabelle said. "She's ours," he said. The word fell into the room and neither of them took it back. The next morning, Annabelle woke at 5:45 to something she had not heard before. Min-jae was in the garden, not conducting a call, not moving between the estate and a car. He was standing at the far rose wall in the gray-blue of early morning, back to the house, still, just standing in the cold quiet with no agenda visible from the window. She made 2 cups of tea. She carried them out through the garden door and crossed the dew-wet grass and stopped beside him without announcement, the way he always came to her. She held out one of the cups. He took it. They stood at the rose wall as the city began its first sounds beyond the walls. "I couldn't sleep," he said, not an explanation. Information. "I know," she said. "I've been thinking about what Seoyeon asked you, about whether her mother is still teaching her." He looked at the roses. "She asked me the same thing later, whether the people who leave are still teaching us." "What did you tell her?" "I told her yes," he said, "but I didn't tell her why I believe it." He paused. "I believe it because I have been taught every day of my adult life by my father, who has been dead for 9 years, not always in good ways." The things he showed me that I have spent years unlearning are also a kind of teaching. He looked at her. And I have been sitting in this garden this morning, thinking about what I am teaching Seoyeon, without intending to, just by being myself in front of her. Annabelle held her cup with both hands. The tea was warm. The morning was cold. "She's learning that power doesn't have to mean distance," she said. "She's learning that someone can be strong and still sit on a playroom floor. She's learning that the man who runs a city can place his hand against his daughter's forehead in the dark and check that she's okay. And those two things are not contradictions." She paused. "She's learning that you chose to stay. Every morning you sat in that chair." That's what she was counting. Not the coffees, the choices. Every time you could have been somewhere else, and you came down and sat in the cup she set out for you. That's what she's filing. That's the lesson. Minjae was very quiet. "She designed that cup ritual for exactly that reason," he said. "Yes," Annabelle said. "She gave you a way to choose her every morning without it costing your pride. You just sit down. It looks like coffee. It is, in fact, the most important thing you do all day." He turned and looked at her with the full, undefended attention that was the rarest thing he had. Rarer than power, rarer than money, rarer than the fearsome reputation that preceded him into every room. All the architecture down. Just a man in a garden in the early morning who had learned, late and imperfectly, and with great difficulty, how to be where he was. "I'm grateful for you," he said. "Not thank you, not transactional acknowledgement of service. Grateful for you, the person, the presence, the specific unrepeatable fact of her." "I know," she said. She meant it as receiving, not dismissal. He understood that. They finished their tea as the sun came fully over the Haven Ridge rooflines and the gold light hit the roses, and somewhere above them, Harold arrived at the east window and began his morning assessment of the territory, which Seoyeon would be documenting in approximately 20 minutes. They went inside. The kitchen was warm, and the third cup was already in its place. Seoyeon was in her chair with her cereal, and the bird journal open to a fresh page. She looked up when Annabelle sat down. She looked at the third cup. She looked at the door that led to the hallway. At 7:23, Minjae's footsteps came down the corridor. He came in. He looked at the table. He looked at the cup in its place. He sat down in it without comment, the way he always did now, the way the cup had made a space for him, and he had learned to fill it. Seoyeon poured his coffee. She did it with both hands, carefully, with the concentrated dignity of a child executing a ritual she had designed and maintained and believed in. He received it with both hands. Nobody said anything about any of it. But Seoyeon looked up from her cereal and caught Annabelle's eye across the table, and in that look was everything. The corridor, the laundry basket, the choice made before anyone asked her to make it, the months of patience, the bird guides and the cookies, and the slow, certain unstoppable architecture of a little girl who had decided what her family looked like and had built it piece by piece until everyone inside it had stopped pretending they weren't. I still choose Belle. She was still choosing. Every morning, every cup, every drawing with 3 figures and a house and a bird on the roofline. She had simply needed the adults to choose back. Outside, Haven Ridge was already conducting its business. The empire, the city, the machinery of a life built for control. Inside, his daughter poured his coffee, and his daughter's bell was at the table, and the third cup was in its place, and the morning was ordinary and warm and completely irreplaceable. This was the thing the empire was for. This was what all of it was protecting. Thank you for watching this all the way to the end. If any single moment in this story got you, like this video right now and subscribe because part 2 is coming, and what Chairman Bay set in motion before he left this house is not finished, not even close. Now, here is the comment war I want you to start below. Annabelle was hired help. She was carrying laundry, A 6-year-old chose her, and a powerful man restructured his entire household around that choice. Some people are going to say that is the most beautiful love story they have ever seen. Some people are going to say that a man who runs criminal operations and moves people out of cities, like pieces on a board, cannot be redeemed by a soft morning and a cup of coffee. And that any woman who believes otherwise is not in a love story, she is in a trap. Who is right? Pick a side. Drop your verdict. I will be reading every single comment. See you in part 2.